lucky to be joined by my colleague, Dr. Netta Pesach, who's part of the team at Yada. She has a PhD in pharmacokinetics and medicinal chemistry from the Hebrew University. Why don't you take my chair that I just vacated a second ago? So to follow on a bit on, thank you. To follow on what Professor Aryav or Gadi was just talking about, when you mentioned the book Startup Nation, the first thing that ran through my mind is that about a third or half of the book was given over to describing the resounding success of Better Place and how they had vision and implemented it, and the president of Israel got involved. And of course, sometime after the publishing of that book, we saw what happened to Better Place. Israel and Israelis in general are a very hyper, self-critical nation. If you come to Israel and read the Hebrew language financial press, you'll think that the sky is going to fall tomorrow. There won't be any high-tech industry. We don't have enough scientists, and the rest of the world is going to take over. Our talk is not quite what Satya said in his introduction, not exactly how successful we are, how great we are, but more what challenges we face, how we face those challenges, how we try to find solutions. I think that the value of any organization is based more on how it faces challenges than how it talks about its own successes. So just a quick two thank yous. One, thank you so much to Satya and to CL Educate for this fantastic event. We're really very happy to be here. And the second thank you is to the organizers for limiting us to just 5 slides in 15 minutes, because that way we have an excuse not to focus on success stories too much, and instead look tomorrow and past tomorrow specifically to talk about why and how we collaborate, why we need to collaborate, more specifically with academia, with firms, with corporates, so that we can remain faithful to our mission. There are many ways in which research universities collaborate with other entities. Slide. Let's go over the traditional ways, and then we'll get past that and talk about the more complicated ways that we implement in order to surmount difficulties. So the traditional ways that we collaborate with other entities are most simply students from different institutions might be exchanged, might spend some time at a different institution. 2 universities might have complementary IP that can be best commercialized, or maybe only commercialized as bundled technologies, and they will collaborate. Universities, of course, accept sponsored research funding from corporates and possibly negotiate later to collaborate on the technology, to license technology. Researchers might consult for companies in certain fields, sometimes with the same companies that receive licenses. And then, of course, our bread and butter is licensing technology to companies and helping the companies along so that they can commercialize technologies, which goes beyond our mandate, which is research. I'll just note in this context that we're proud at Weitzman to have an ongoing sponsored research arrangement with Sun Pharma here in India, together with a Spanish university in the field of brain research and strokes. I'm also aware of some attempts at co-commercialization with one of the IITs, and of course we'll be very pleased to see more. These are the well-known forms of collaboration. Nearly every university is involved in them in some way, so we're not going to spend too much time on when matters progress seamlessly. Even though, of course, nothing's easy in tech transfer. And I'll also mention at this point that I think the term tech transfer has exhausted its usefulness. Transfer denotes one point in time where before that the university has the technology, and then after that point in time it goes to the company. And as I'll show in a moment, it's not that easy anymore, and the attempts have to be much more collaborative and tailored to the specific technologies. We call these efforts bridging the gap, which means that when the research ends, technology is not quite ready to go to the firms and the corporates, and various efforts have to be implemented, which we'll get down into the weeds in a second and discuss in detail. We call that bridging the gap, and Netta is a project manager at our Bridging the Gap section in Yada, and in a moment she'll discuss in detail the types of efforts that we make. Before that, just a few words about the Weizmann Institute, which you can see in the slide. We're one of 8 public universities in Israel, but the only one that's devoted solely to the basic sciences. We have only 5 faculties with biology, biological chemistry, physics, mathematics, which also includes computer science. We don't have a medical school, we don't have an engineering school, we don't have an MBA program. One other thing we don't have is undergraduate students. All of our students are either an MSc, PhD, or postdoc programs. This gives the researchers a great amount of freedom to pursue research in their labs without having the administrative and other responsibilities of educating undergrads. We also try to give as much freedom as we can to researchers to pursue those fields that they feel will be promising. The administration of Weizmann understands that it's the researchers who know best where the next discovery breakthrough might come from, and except in extreme cases, they just let them pursue and take the science where they think it should go. The numbers are impressive, at least to us, in the proportions of a country which, as Gadi mentioned, is less than metropolitan Hyderabad. We have about 700 PhD students at any given time, 400 postdocs, and our science PhDs are a pretty large proportion of all the science PhDs that are conferred in Israel. The operating budget is about 400 million US, and only about 1/3 of that comes from the government. The rest comes from various grants from our endowment. That also gives us an additional degree of freedom. Just a word about successes, even though I said we wouldn't talk about it. We do have one Nobel laureate for chemistry, Professor Ada Yonat. She received the Nobel a number of years back, and there are also a number of alumni who left Weizmann for other pastures and received their Nobel Prizes there. Some of whom have actually come out and said that they would have stayed in Weizmann if they'd been offered tenure, but they weren't, so we lost out on a bit. And lastly, we're proud to have a multiplicity of nationalities among our student body, especially in the PhD programs. And it's very common when you walk around the campus to see quite a few Saris and Salwars among the students who are taking breaks from their lab work. So now I want to talk more about bridging the gap. So we started to speak about technologies which are great inventions in themselves, but not ripe for commercialization. And once technology transfer was just a transfer, researchers in their labs would make a discovery. They'd patent it. They'd write a nice paper in Nature or in some other reputable journal. And then a firm would come along, say, we like this, we'll take a license to your patent, and then we'll develop the drug, or we'll develop the process, the chemical process, and then and pay you royalties. For some time now, it hasn't been that easy. I can tell you that each and every one of our 9 or 10 major licenses that we've negotiated and signed in the last year have not been simple. Each one of them has had their own measure of special efforts that had to be invested in order to help the company along, do additional research, procure services from third parties. And this is due to a number of circumstances that have arisen. First is the rise of private equity. And their natural and understandable aversion to risk, their aversion to long-term profitability prospects, particularly in the pharma field. Similar to that, in the same field, the companies have a huge number of compounds. Once we would find a compound, we would show in a mouse model that the compound was effective to target, to treat a certain disorder. Company would say, very nice, we'll take it, we'll try to develop it, run through phase 1, 2, 3. These days, there are so many potential compounds that have already been discovered. Some have even been discovered by the big pharma companies themselves that they just aren't interested in getting another one and taking the risk and spending tens or hundreds of $millions in developing a drug that comes from outside when they have so many different candidates that they can use inside. Another one of the circumstances that contributes to the difficulty, and it's actually something that we welcome, and I'm not in any way saying it's a bad thing, and that's competition from other tech transfer organizations. In the US, until the Bayh-Dole Act of 1980, it was more or less illegal for universities to give exclusive licenses on the research, on the results of research that was funded by the federal government, which meant that they really couldn't give any exclusive licenses, and that meant that no companies would even entertain the thought of taking a license if anybody else could then use the invention. It took a number of years in the U.S. for technology transfer to find its footing and to find the right way of the right balance and the right way of doing things. And it's only in the last 10 years or so that we see so many tech transfer organizations making very admirable efforts. And of course, the end result is that if a corporate is looking to sponsor research, looking to in-license some technologies, of course, that's only when he's not looking for a very specific technology invented in one university, then he has a number of very world-famous and reputable institutions to choose from among. It also means that those companies don't have to go overseas. It's easier for a Silicon Valley company to go to Stanford and ask them for research than to fly 20 hours and land in Tel Aviv and then speak to the Weizmann Institute. Of course, that also helps us because we collaborate with the same universities, and that increases the value of our joint collaboration. One other very important circumstances, the decreased enforceability of patents in the U.S. I'm sure many of you have heard about the relatively new proceedings that the U.S. allows before the PTAB, I believe it is. You don't have to go to court anymore to ask to invalidate a patent. If you're an infringer of a patent in the U.S. and the patent owner will assert the patent and try to sue you for infringement, the first thing you do now is to go to the U.S. Patent Office. You don't have to go to federal court, and you actually put the onus on the patent owner to prove that the patent is valid. You don't have to prove it's invalid. You say, I think this patent's invalid, and the patent owner has to go through a lot of hoops and spend a lot of money proving that it is valid. This means that a bare patent that we offer to a corporate doesn't have the same value that it once did. They know that they might get some knowledge that eventually, once the patent application is published, will become public knowledge, and their ability to prevent other companies from practicing the same invention decrease to some extent. That means that nobody wants a bare patent license anymore. They'd like the patent. They would like some additional know-how that the scientist can offer them. They might like consulting from the scientist. And it also lowers the value that we can attribute to our invention in the greater value of their product. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, academia does not want the reputation of engaging too much in commercialization. We don't have time to go into this issue too much, but academia is a bit like the goose that laid the golden eggs. It can come up with some very excellent results, that great things can be done with them, but if the emphasis is put on those results, on research results that are suitable for commercialization at the expense of the basic research, then very, very soon we're going to see academia only focusing on that. There's certainly enough financial incentives both for the researchers and also for the universities to shift their focus away from basic science and just tailor research towards what the corporates need. And of course, the end result will be that in a few short years, there will be neither basic research nor results of basic research that can feed industry. It's interesting that in Israel, there's zero legislation that governs how universities are allowed to commercialize their patents. They can sell patents, they can license them. And we see that empirically, they have not taken advantage of this lack of regulation. And speaking as someone from Weizmann, I see every single day the struggles that the administration of the university and the leadership at Yedda go through to ensure that we're not overstepping our mandate, that we're not turning Weizmann into an applied research supplier. Sometimes researchers will come, will say, here, we have a $500,000 grant from this company, and they'd like us to focus on one thing, and sometimes we'll tell them, no, you can't do that because we feel it's too commercial and it's going to take us away from what our main focus is supposed to be. So let's say we have some research results from a lab, and it's not mature enough for commercialization, and we'll get to the concrete examples in a moment. one knee-jerk reaction by a university or a technology transfer organization would be, let's form a spin-out. It'll get some funding and it'll take the problem off of our hands. But for the same reasons that we mentioned before, finance is not interested in long-term returns. It's hard to get it. They wouldn't get the right people. So in that case, the university acting as an accelerator in the sense that they would provide seed money for a startup would probably end in failure, just for the same reason that the technology started as an unripe technology, and it would remain that way. So after this somewhat high-level survey of why not all technologies can be commercialized, I'd like to ask Netta to continue. She's going to review the major types of gaps between basic research and commercialization, and the various ways that we can bridge those gaps. Netta.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. I'd like to review the major type of gaps between basic research and market and how we can bridge them. Okay, so the science at the Weizmann Institute, as Aaron mentioned, is very broad spectrum. It ranges from biology through physics, chemistry, computer science, agriculture, and more. When our team hears of a new promising discovery or invention, but it's still too far from commercializing, we can focus and help the scientists and direct them to an actual target. When a scientist identifies a potential product or inventions which are not part of their research routine, we can support initial steps in order to provide proof of concept and register a patent. Once the proof of concept was established and the patent was submitted, in order for the patent not to be rejected, sometimes further studies and experiments need to be executed and need to be performed, and our team helps design and execute these kind of experiments in order to strengthen the patent and reduce the chances that it is rejected. Okay. In most cases, academia lacks the knowledge of what makes a discovery valuable from a commercial perspective. So our team helps direct and guide the scientists, and we mentor the scientists in order to be more focused on the demands of the market. Sometimes we even hire experts in order to, in different fields, in order to guide and mentor the scientists, and even us, the tech transfer team. So, I'll give you some examples from the drug development field for examples of gaps and how we can bridge them. Okay, so the first gap relates to the drug substance. The drug substance is the active entity inside of a drug. Most bridging methods relate to outsourcing, as we lack the capability of doing it in-house, meaning in academia. Okay, so at early stages of research, the drug substance is not well characterized. It sometimes includes several active entities, and it is not manufactured under good manufacturing procedures. This restrains us from moving forward towards marketing. So the solution would be to engage a CRO to provide a fully characterized single active entity, and at going along the way to manufacture the substance in a good manufacturing procedure. The second gap relates to the drug product. Early stages active entities are mostly administered in the labs by intravenously or intraperitoneal routes of administration. In order to improve commercial value, we would need to find the best way for oral administration. And oral formulation is an art form. It is provided mainly by highly expert CROs, and we aim to find the best formulator for each specific project. In academia, mainly in-house, we lack the ability to perform studies that are required by regulation for drug development, mainly toxicology and pharmacokinetics. Also, sometimes we lack the best animal models in order to bring this invention to market. So again, we engage CROs that these are their expertise. And by that, we promote the invention toward an actual product. Okay, so if we're cutting to the chase, let us summarize by reviewing the potential collaboration in which Israel and India can cooperate. Okay, so we have first the straightforward collaboration, meaning outsourcing studies at highly expert CRO and corporates to do drug substance manufacturing, to do animal models, to do the toxicology and the pharmacokinetics. And if we want to widen the potential collaborations, we need to find novel strategies. And the novel strategies would include inter-academic development of early stage technologies ready for licensing, but that are not fully developed. So this could lead to this will lead to working together between two research institutes. The second collaboration would be between consultants and medicines. As I mentioned before, we're looking for experts in different fields of science. And once we find the right expert, they can, after collaboration, take this invention and become the entrepreneur and take this invention forward and lead it to the market. Aaron, would you like to conclude?
Netta, thank you so much for that. Just to end off, I would be remiss if I didn't direct everyone to our website, which is here. We have a number of open technologies that are listed on the website. And I also welcome contact from any of you. We recognize that there are many institutions that are very successful scientifically and don't always enjoy the correct regulatory, possibly financial circumstances which allow them to do effective tech transfer. And if we can be in touch with those institutions to learn from them, to perhaps share our experiences in the past, either at this conference or later after we're all back home, we would certainly welcome that. Thank you so much. Dan Yavad.